Which New York Giant should you be selling in your dynasty leagues right now? We're talking all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me as always is Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, how are you today?
I am very good. How are you? Weather's breaking and out mowing the lawn. And I did I just started my first ever best ball draft this morning and feel like I'm turning over a new leaf.
Very nice. Best ball dynasty, I assume.
No, this is just a regular underdog, trying to get in the swing of fantasy. I always ignore that. And I'm kind of jealous of people that have these conversations. So put a couple bucks in and dig it in a little bit.
You are you're going to become addicted to underdog. It is so fun to be drafting all the time. I usually have about 10 drafts going on at once.
Really?
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. You're going to love it. I just actually started earlier this past weekend, started a new dynasty startup.
Right.
So I'm drafting right now. This is part of the Kings Classic league. Those are the leagues that take place in Canton, Ohio at the FF Expo, which happens every September, I guess, August, September, right before the season starts. So this is a brand new dynasty league. Lots of guys from around the industry. It's going to be fun. I've got a pretty good start here. We might talk about that more in the coming episodes. But today,
highly competitive, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it has been so far. Lots of trades, lots of action. It's been fun.
Ooh, I made a big trade about an hour ago, too.
Hey, let's hear it.
So I have a pretty stacked team, and the rookie draft starts Friday, and I'm realizing it's tough to make my cuts, and my roster space is a problem. So I just put a post out there. I'm after a big dog. I'm willing to pay. I'm after a big dog. And immediately a guy writes back and says, Justin Jefferson could be had. I'm like, well, that's a pretty big dog. So I kind of feel like I fleeced him, but I got Justin Jefferson, Jamison Williams, who I'll be happy to stick on IR until he's ready, 2-9, and next year's second from a team that I think is not so great. I really wanted that future second. I gave up Calvin Ridley, Mike Williams, 1-6, 112 and 3-4.
Oh my goodness, Matt, love it.
Should I not say these things out loud?
Well, listen, I hope
he was real hooked on Ridley and Williams. And I was
like, I like Ridley. I like Williams.
Me too. Yeah,
nice depth.
I got younger at receiver and better.
Oh man, yeah, that's a great deal. You don't need me to tell you that was a great deal.
Yeah.
Matt, we are going to talk about the New York Giants today. Kate and Marcus started our team-by-team look at buys, sells, and holds in the dynasty landscape. So we're into rookie draft season, and a lot of you listening are maybe even already past your rookie drafts. Maybe they're already in the books, and whether you are looking at your existing dynasty teams or you're in a new startup draft like I am right now, you're thinking about player value, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about really for the next couple months. We're going to have 8 straight weeks of episodes focused on buys, sells, and holds. They talked to Cowboys yesterday, of course. We knew Marcus would pick the Cowboys. No surprise there. But, some good conversation about Tony Pollard and the guys over there. We're talking New York Giants. So let's get to it here, Matt. The one player on the Giants roster that you should be selling right now, who are you getting rid of on this Giants roster?
I had 2 names that I think are kind of obvious, but I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit on Saquon. Yeah. I mean, great player, just super expensive. Future after this year is uncertain. Chance of a holdout, which I never like hearing, or not being at some of the camps and whatnot. they added 84 million slot receivers and a tight end, and makes me think that they'll feature him a little bit less. Not that Gray, the rookie, is, a problem for Saquon Barkley, of course, but it's one more mouth in the backfield and maybe preparing for another day. And he's in that age of running back where you dump him,
Yeah, Barkley was mine as well. I thought we might agree on that one. I mean, you look at the running back rankings. He is the running back 5 in our ADP, and he's kind of in that middle range. He's certainly not old, not young anymore either. 26 years old. So if you want to go the veteran route, I would much rather have Christian McCaffrey, who's actually just 6 months older than Barkley. I would prefer Austin Eckler as well, who's a little
straight
bit
up.
older.
You would prefer Eckler to Barkley straight up?
Yes, yeah,
I do too. I mean, I wouldn't redraft. Yeah,
right. So, yeah, I want McCaffrey or Eckler if I'm investing in one of those veterans. And then if I've got a team that's a couple years away, or I'm more worried about age, well, then I'm certainly pushing for a guy like Breece Hall or, one of the rookies. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs would be in that same value range.
Sure.
So really, no matter what kind of team you're building right now, I think I would prefer other options rather than Barkley. Looking at the trade finder over at Dynasty League Football, there's Barkley for T. Higgins deals, Barkley for Tua in a super flex league. I'm taking both of those pretty easily.
Yeah.
Barkley for Mark Andrews and a tight end premium. There's certainly a market for Saquon Barkley. He would definitely be a player I would be looking to sell. So like I said, I thought we would agree on that one, and we certainly do. You said you had 2 names. Who else is a little,
I'm not super convinced.
Are you worried about?
I'm not super convinced on Waller. I mean, just hasn't played a lot of football lately. Older than you think. Yeah. Only gave up a 3rd round pick for him. Kind of tells you what the league thinks, and he's not ridiculously expensive. And I have heard some people I really trust that are talking about him as the tight end 3 for redraft this year, only behind Kelsey and Andrews. I'm having a hard time paying that kind of price, let alone, so if there is some buzz, I think I'm listening to offers. I might go younger there and might rather Freiermuth or somebody like that,
Interesting. Yeah. We can talk about Waller later. Maybe he'll come up in conversation a little bit later. So again, we are talking buys, sells, and holds. That's the buy. I'm sorry, that is the sell. Saquon Barkley. We're ready to move off of him, but there's some other players certainly worthy of conversation on this Giants roster, and we will continue that right after this.
So I'm a really strange NBA fan. I don't even call myself a fan because I don't even know what players are on what teams, to be honest. But because of my NFL lifestyle, the draft is about over. It's usually about early May I start turning on the NBA playoffs, and then I'm hooked. I mean, it happens every year. I'm psyched to watch the game tonight, but I come in really, really late to the process. And that's what I got to tell you about FanDuel. I mean, make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because I'm going to hit it hard just for fun. Because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So again, FanDuel has been a good friend of the Locked On Network now for quite some time. You can get paid instantly. That can be an issue with some of these sites. Safe and secure, super easy to use. There's all kinds of different promotions for them. And again, for me, as learning the NBA or coming so late to the party, it just makes it a lot more fun. So there's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Matt, we started the show with kind of some negative thoughts on Saquon Barkley. Let's turn to a player that we want to buy. And before you tell us who yours is, let's just kind of go over this roster. These are the players on the New York Giants roster that show up in DLF Dynasty ADP. So essentially you could say worthy of a roster spot. We already talked about Saquon Barkley. He is the RB5. You mentioned Darren Waller, tight end 9 right now in our Dynasty ADP. Big value gap after Waller, way down to Wan'Dale Robinson. He is the wide receiver 51. Jalen Hyatt, newly drafted for the Giants, wide receiver 57. Their quarterback, Daniel Jones, is quarterback 16. Eric Gray, the rookie running back, RB 62. And then we've got some depth pass catchers. Isaiah Hodgins, wide receiver 84. Paris Campbell, wide receiver 92. Darius Slayton, wide receiver 101. And their backup tight end, Daniel Bellinger, tight end 38. So, Matt, we're going to go shopping here. Who's the player on this roster that you want to acquire, that you want to buy?
Well, I stole yours. So do you want to go first here?
Well, yeah, I'm going back to Darren Waller. You were
okay.
concerned about him. I mean, obviously last year was a bit of a forgotten year with the injury, the addition also of Devontae Adams. I think we were worried about what that would do to Waller because he had dominated that Raiders offense really as the wide receiver 1 before they had a true guy, a true stud like Adams on that roster. So I think there were some concerns about Waller's status heading into this past season, and ultimately the injury kind of made it not matter in the end. But you're right. I mean, you said Waller was older than we think. He is over 30 already, but I mean, we talk about that wear on the tires, right? He's got plenty left because he had the late career breakout as he switched from wide receiver to tight end. Also dealt with some tough off the field issues that he seemingly has overcome, which is obviously a great story there. But the result is he might have 2, 3, 4, 5 years left of quality production. We see those top end tight ends perform into their mid 30s. I mean, we're seeing it now with a guy like Travis Kelce, who's going to be 34 very soon. So I'm really excited about the trade, the new landing spot for Waller in New York. Okay. He's kind of right back to where he was a couple of years ago with the Raiders, surrounded by, a bunch of okay wide receivers and average talents. But I mean, to me, he's the best pass catcher on that roster, and he's going to get fed targets in that Brian Daboll offense.
Great points. I hope I'm wrong about him because he's an easy guy to root for. And Daboll, to me, is absolutely the key. I'll have to think on him a little bit more. Maybe he's going to be somebody that my initial thoughts are, he's getting old. He's beat up a little bit, as opposed to, boy, he's their number 1 receiver.
Yeah. Well, I do like the cost, and that's part of it. He is the tight end 9, as I mentioned. You said you'd rather have Freiermuth. The community agrees with you because Freiermuth is the tight end 8. We've got guys like Dalton Kincaid at 7, and then the top 6 are pretty locked in. I would say Andrews, Kelsey, Pitts, Hawk, Kittle, and Goddard. But this time a year ago, Waller was part of that locked in top 4, top 5 guys, and he fell off because of that injury. So I don't know if he can move back into that top tier, that even that second tier. But I do think he can have a very nice bounce back and be a pretty good value at where we're seeing him go right now in drafts and in trades as well. All right. You didn't steal mine. I know we disagree on Waller. Who are you buying on this Giants roster?
Well, you got to go with the Kentucky guy, right? Wan'Dale Robinson. Yeah, I mean, I really liked him coming out of school. I didn't think he'd be a second-round pick, but he really didn't do anything to hurt his stock. And a year ago, I know he got hurt, but a year ago, you'd have got him a lot higher than wide receiver 51. I know there's a million slot guys on this team, as I mentioned, but this staff drafted him with, intentions, and I think he can be a slot machine, a high-volume, low ADOT type of guy. Catches a lot of balls.
Yeah, I mean, I had to talk about Robinson. I couldn't get through a show without talking about a Wildcat. I love that you have him listed as a buy, and at wide receiver 51, that certainly is it's tempting to go out and buy him. but he is coming off that ACL. I think we haven't really heard much about his recovery, but I mean, just timeline wise, I think it would make sense that he would be a possible PUP candidate and miss the, maybe the first 6 weeks of the season. But you look at that production. Of course, he dealt with an injury as a rookie as well. He played week 1, didn't play again until week 6, put up some nice numbers. Looking at a 5-game span or a 5-week span between week 6 and 11, had 3 games as a double-digit scorer, including a week where he was among the wide receiver ones for the week and scored over 19 fantasy points. So, I mean, that's encouraging. There's a lot of bodies there, and I'll kind of jump ahead to the to the end of the show. Wan'Dale Robinson, I had him as my hold because I definitely am not giving up on him. I've got quite a few shares already because I am a homer, and I'm keeping those. But all the additions, they signed Paris Campbell, they draft Hyatt, they re-signed Hodgins. I'm wondering how this is going to work out, and not to mention the addition of Waller. So nobody ever looked at Wan'Dale Robinson as a wide receiver 1 type for his team, and we still don't. But you're right. I think you could see a ton of targets from the slot. Right now, I just want the guy to get healthy. Definitely rooting for him for a lot of reasons. But I had him listed as my hold.
Okay, that makes sense. On top of this, though, I have Gray, Bellinger, and Sterling Shepard, who isn't even on this list because he might flat out be broken, as cheap throw-in buys. Deep leagues. I still own Sterling Shepard in like 75% of my leagues, and I blame Matt Harmon for liking him so much.
Yeah, when a guy is that cheap, and I mean, we could go really anybody after Daniel Jones here. So Gray, Hodgins, Campbell, Slayton, Bellinger, and you mentioned Shepard as well. At some point, it's like, why not? Take a shot. Yeah. The guy I'm interested in, I thought you might mention there, is Isaiah Hodgins. He is the wide receiver 84 in this ADP. You look at his last 5 games of the season, and of course the Giants were going through wide receivers like crazy because Robinson had gotten hurt, Shepard had gotten hurt, and several others that I can't even recall. They were rolling with Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins. But you look at Hodgins' last 5 games, 15 fantasy points, has a game with 7. Then he goes for 23 and then 14. So certainly ended the season on a high note, earned another year from the Giants on that contract. I'm kind of interested in him. I mean, you talked about your underdog drafts early on. I think he's a great player to target in those later rounds of best ball drafts, and a nice dynasty target as well.
So real quick on him, like when he started catching balls, I was like, oh, that's a cute story. They have nothing else. It's totally by default. Someone has to catch passes for the Giants. Dayball's scheming him up. But then when you actually pay attention to him, it's like, well, he's got size. They were quick to bring him back. He's going to be on the field a lot.
Yeah, and I think because the narrative was that the Giants were just running through guys, and I mean, that wasn't really the narrative. That's what was going on. They were they were desperate for bodies. We kind of look at a guy like Isaiah Hodgins and think, oh, he's just another veteran receiver that they needed to get through the year. I mean, this is a player who was an early day 3 pick by the Buffalo Bills in 2021. I mean, he's 24 years old, and for whatever reason, the Bills gave up on him. The Giants scooped him up. That's why he had kind of an odd contract situation. He only played 1 game as a rookie in 2021, and then the Giants fed him down the stretch, and it worked pretty well. Again, with Robinson coming off the injury, Jalen Hyatt, I mean, he fell in the draft. We're a little worried about the type of receiver he's going to be. Are they just going to use him on deep stuff? Like Isaiah Hodgins could be the wide receiver 1 for this team for the first month and maybe even for the full season.
I mean, 8 targets a game isn't crazy for him,
No.
Slants and fades and stuff like that. Right.
Not at all. Matt, we'll wrap up the conversation about the New York Giants and their fantasy relevant players right after this. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Every dayers, check out tomorrow's show. Matt and I will be back. We'll be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. Lots of buys on that team. We'll see if we can find a player to move on from as well. All right, Matt, let's finish up the Giants conversation here. A player that you want to hold. I already told you mine, Wan'Dale Robinson. A little worried about the injury, a little worried about the moves that the team has made, but still certainly a big fan of the player. So he's the guy that I'm holding. And a lot of times I think about a hold as just a player you're not sure of. And maybe it is because of injury or maybe other reasons as well. But just a player you don't have a strong conviction on either way. Is that the case here for you, or is it something else?
Kind of the opposite. Mine's super boring, Daniel Jones, because I think I know exactly what he is. And he's going to run a lot. They invested money in him. He maybe threw to the worst receivers in the league last year, but I don't think he's particularly good. But he's going to be the Giants quarterback at least for the next 2 years. I mean, he would have to absolutely fall on his face this next year to not be back after that. And he produces in fantasy. He's the quarterback 16. It certainly wouldn't shock me if he ends up being a QB1 when the season's over, cumulative points. So if I have him, great. I'll start him a lot, especially in Superflex. If I don't, I'm not crying over it, but he's right in the middle. He's even Steven.
Yeah, I like this call. And I debated on Daniel Jones if I wanted to list him as a hold or a buy, because I'm with you. We know what he is, but we also know what Brian Daboll is. And Brian Daboll is one of the best coaches in the league, especially when it comes to getting the most out of his quarterbacks. You look at Daniel Jones, 4 seasons in the league, comes out with a really solid rookie season, had 4 QB1 games, and had us dynasty players buying in. Year 2, a little bit of a drop off, only had 2 quarterback 1 seasons. And then year 3 bounces back with 3 and then has that injury late in the season. So he's going into year 4 now with a new coaching staff. Of course, that was last season. And he's got a total of 9 QB1 seasons. And his value is steadily declining in his 3 seasons. He gives us 7 quarterback 1 games last year. Wow. And a finish as the quarterback 11 overall. And as you mentioned, he did that with a patchwork group of pass catchers. I'm excited to see what he does with Waller, what he does with a guy like Jalen Hyatt, who we know can get deep. Another year in that Daboll system. Yeah, it's still kind of back and forth for me as far as if I want to go out and buy Daniel Jones or if I just consider him a hold. But either way, if he's on my roster already, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if I'm loaded everywhere else and he's my QB1, I'm pretty happy. If it's super flex, I'm super happy. He's going to produce. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Matt, good conversation about the Giants today. As I said, this is just the beginning. We're covering every single NFL team. We'll do that from Mondays through Thursdays. On Fridays, Kate and Marcus will open up the mailbag and answer your questions. So we'll we'll continue the NFC East tomorrow with the Philadelphia Eagles. Check that one out. But that is it for today's show. Please make sure you download and subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL, and I'm Ryan MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.